It's early in the season, but the Toronto Maple Leafs were already dealing with serious injuries in goal. We'll talk about that and all things Maple Leafs coming up on the Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. Gil Martin, glad to be with you today, and thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Been a very interesting early season so far for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Dave Marsutti of Locked On Leafs is with us. And Dave, hard to believe we're 3 games in and already a serious injury to the starting goaltender. Talk to me about how long he'll be out and what this means for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, it kind of all just turned it turned in a really a weird direction on Saturday when Matt Murray left the morning skate with, at the time there was a lot of speculation of what the injury could be, but then Sheldon Keefe said it was groin discomfort, and when you hear groin and goaltender, doesn't sound very appealing or easy for a fan base to hear that, especially with the goaltender who has injury history like Matt Murray. And so yet then it was announced later that the Leafs had put him on LTIR with an abductor injury, which means he's going to be out at least a minimum of 4 weeks. That's what the team has put as the timeline. Because they're putting him on LTIR, he was going to have to miss a minimum of the 10 games, with the injury. So this put the Leafs in a really awkward position because Eric Schalgren, the third goaltender who was with the Marlies, had to leave the game early because of it. He got into a collision, and there was some worries of that whether he could even suit up as the backup for Ilya Samsonov in that game that Matt Murray was supposed to play. So the Leafs might have been in a position where they might have had to sign an emergency backup. But the reason why they put Murray on the LTR is because they do not have the ability to sign another goaltender. Basically, they're at the 50 contract limit. So whoever was in the system signed to a contract, which is at this point Eric Schalgren, Joseph Woll, who is the fourth on that depth chart, is still recovering from an injury. So the Leafs have had really, really brutal luck when it comes to goaltending injuries. There was always that issue with Matt Murray. There was going to be that problem going into the season. Nobody expected it to happen go after, he's only had one start with the team. So it's an unfortunate situation for him, but luckily Ilya Samsonov did very well in his 2 starts, 2 wins. So the Leafs at least don't have to worry about the guy in net right now. Long term, it's a little bit of a concern knowing that if something, knock on wood, God forbid something happens to Ilya Samsonov, the rest of the team's goaltending situation looks very murky.
As far as Samsonov is concerned, can he handle playing the next 8, 9, 10 games in a row, or 9 out of the 10?
Yeah, that's good. That's the big question. Sheldon Keefe, I don't think wants to do that. He did say that Schalgren is okay. He should be able to play. They're going to probably give Samsonov a good bulk of the starts down this in this 10-game stretch. But I think you're going to see Schalgren get quite a few as well. He, out of the goaltenders that the Leafs did have at training camp and preseason, Schalgren was that third guy getting at least a bulk of the work. I think they did that for a reason. They knew that given the injury history that Murray had, even Samsonov has had his injury concerns too in the past. They were going to need a third guy that could be able to come in and step in. Luckily for them, Eric Schalgren did this last season when both Jack Campbell and Peter Mrazek were out with injuries. He became the Leafs starter just because he was the next guy on the depth chart, and he did admirably well considering the situation. So I think the Leafs are going to be comfortable giving him a few starts. They're not going to want to do, a split between him and Samsonov. Samsonov will be the starter. Um, I don't think it'll be a question of whether he can play those games. It's can he handle, and this was something that Washington was concerned about. Can he handle the workload of being a true starting goaltender? I think with the Leafs, it'll be a little bit different. This is a team that has the offense to pick up the goaltending through this stretch, but yeah, there's a little bit of an unproven aspect of it, and the Leafs are going to find out if this insurance policy they have with Samsonov is the right move for them.
Little bit of a surprise. Wayne Simmonds does not make the team opening night. He has been recalled since then, but talk to me about his situation and what his future is or is not with the Maple Leafs.
Yeah, this was a numbers game for Wayne Simmonds because by all accounts, the team wants to have him around, even if he's not playing all the time. Just as the veteran leader in the room, right? And there's Wayne Simmons still has, and in some teams maybe not as prevalent, but he's got that physicality. He's gonna able to drop the gloves if need be. The Leafs have proven that they don't necessarily need that player on an every night basis, which led to the decision to put him on waivers. Unfortunately, they're up against the cap. Wayne Simmons cap hit, unfortunately, was just too much for them to even become cap compliant to start the season. Now with Matt Murray on LTIR, the Leafs have now found cap flexibility for the meantime. But it's an unfortunate situation for Wayne Simmons. We heard that the Leafs had emailed team, pretty much sent an email to teams saying he's available. We don't really care too much about what we get back. We just want to get Wayne Simmons into a situation that is good for him to play. He deserves to play. He might not be the same Wayne Simmons from years ago putting up 30 goals in a season, but he's still an NHL player. He is still he can still play in the league in my opinion. And for the Leafs, they're at the 50 contract limit. So the other motivation is they got to make some space because a situation like this, you want to be able to sign a goaltender potentially in an emergency situation. The Leafs also have a top prospect in Matthew Knies right now playing in the NCAA, and if he decides he wants to come to the NHL, the Leafs are going to have that spot to sign him. So Wayne Simmons knows the situation. He still thinks that Toronto is the best spot for him, but he also knows that if he's not going to be playing, he realizes that his hands will be kind of tied, and he'll likely accept the trade. He does have a modified no trade clause, so he does have a bit of a say of where he would go. But I think knowing that he would be playing just to get him his right at this point, the focus should be get Wayne Simmons playing so teams who may want to trade for him can at least evaluate what he is doing.
Leafs now playing their next 7 games against Western Conference teams. What does that mean for the Leafs at this early point in the season?
Yeah, I mean their schedule's kind of it's a little bit wonky. They start off with a back to back. Not an ideal thing for any NHL team to start your season with back to back games. We all know how that first game went. It was a game that a lot of fans right now would just not want to see to relive anymore. But the last 2 wins have kind of cooled the waters a little bit. So now you have the Coyotes come to town that should, in most cases mean an easier night for the Leafs. But we know the Leafs don't really take teams who they should beat. That's usually a tough game for them. Western Conference teams, Leafs hadn't really had much of an issue against, and they do have some teams that made the playoffs or at least are playoff caliber teams. So it's not going to be an easy stretch for them. I think the good thing is that this California trip is coming early. You kind of want to get that done early in the season when players are a little bit more fresh. There's less, dealing with fewer bumps and bruises. So I think the fact that this California trip is coming earlier rather than later in the season is actually a good thing for the Leafs this time around.
Dave, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yes, you can go follow Locked On Leafs on Twitter at Locked On Leafs. Can you make sure you please all subscribe where you get your podcast? Help us get those subscriptions number up on YouTube. We just passed 2,000 not too long ago, so it's a great milestone for us. So we're very happy about that. We're happy about the support. So you can go and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from, and you can follow me on Twitter at _Morisuti.
All right. Always a pleasure, Dave. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Gil.
The numbers don't lie. In the last decade, over 4 million people have chosen Simply Safe Home Security to protect their home. You don't earn the trust of that many people without doing something right. At Simply Safe, your safety is the only thing that matters. I know because I use Simply Safe in my own home. They protect you with cutting-edge security technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who always have your back. Here's why I love it. Simply Safe blankets your home in protection with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door, HD security cameras for inside and outside your home, smarter ways to detect motion that only alert you when a threat is real, and even hazard sensors that instantly detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. Our monitoring experts use proprietary advanced response technology to visually confirm when a break-in is real so you can get the highest priority police dispatch. Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplysafe.com/lockedonnhl. Save 20% on your Simply Safe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month free. Just visit simplysafe.com/lockedonnhl to learn more. There's no safe like Simply Safe.